My name is Hannah Pausch. I am the program director here at Ag Forestry. For those of you who do not know me, welcome to this Tune-Up Tuesday. We're very excited to have you with us. Tune-Up Tuesdays, we put together Tune-Up Tuesdays as we're in this year of COVID and we're not gathering in person. We wanted to have an opportunity for us to come together and just take a day or an hour really out of the month and focus on tuning up our leadership with some practical skills. So I am very excited to have Ben Cochran here with us today. Ben is a member of Class 41, which is the class that is in this weird COVID limbo because they have completed 99.9% of the program and yet they have not graduated. And so we are excited to get them across the finish line in April with their virtual graduation. So Ben is from Colotis and he works at Cochran Farms. And he, in high school, was very involved in FFA, which is where he became a parliamentary procedure enthusiast and has volunteered to help all of us understand better how parliamentary procedure works and how we can be experts as we go out into our leadership roles as on boards and different organizations that we work with. So thank you so much, Ben. And if you have your screen on, please help me with a virtual round of applause.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, everybody. Like Hannah said, my name's Ben. I went to school in Colotis, Washington, which is right on the edge of the Palouse and the Columbia Basin. And it was a really small school. So I was started in FFA in 8th grade and I had a really good FFA advisor that got 5 of us interested in FFA. And so I did parliamentary procedure. And so we had a really young group starting out our first year. Didn't do very well, but kind of got us hooked. And yeah, I did parliamentary procedure from 8th all the way to when I was a senior. So I wouldn't call myself a parliamentary procedure guru, as Hannah titled me, but I would say that I probably spent more time on the National Association of Parliamentary Procedure, probably spent a little bit more time on that than most normal folks have. So today we're going to be discussing parliamentary procedure, some ways, and just some ways to maybe help your business or whatever committees you might be on kind of run a little better through using parliamentary procedure. So I'd like to start off with some main objectives of parliamentary procedure. The main objective of parliamentary procedure is to run a meeting and to run it quickly and efficiently. And so some main objectives that I like to bring up when talking about parliamentary procedure are that it really helps you focus on one item or one topic at a time. There's a ranking or a procedural times when you have to, some motions take precedent over another. So like I was saying about focusing on one item at a time, there's some motions where you can't make another motion until you've finished with that item that you have on the table. It also helps observe the rule of the majority. Most motions that are voted on require a majority, sometimes a 2/3 majority, but we'll get into that a little more. And then also to ensure the rights of the minority. Parliamentary procedure at its core is supposed to let everyone have a voice and everyone's opinions to be heard on a matter. So those are just some objectives that I like to think about when I'm working with parliamentary procedure. And so we'll get into what the basics of running a meeting should have. And if anybody has any questions or wants me to stop and explain a little bit more, go ahead. I need to start my screen sharing. I can do that now. Sorry about that. Well, I'm gonna put up a Robert Rules cheat sheet, just that has a list of motions on it, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to kind of just go through what a meeting run by parliamentary procedure should include. So every meeting should have an agenda, and that agenda should be set, and you'll be able to run your meeting based off of that, how your agenda is set up every time. So you can go back to, yes, we know that first we need to call the meeting to order. That's what should happen at every meeting, to know that you're running it through parliamentary procedure. So you have your president or your chairman call the meeting to order, and then you'll do roll call, which is done by the secretary. And that's to determine if your meeting or committee or whatever has a quorum. So the amount of members needed to pass a motion for the entire assembly. And then you move on to minutes. That'll include all your business from previous meeting. These do not have to be read at the time of the meeting. You can print them out and hand them out to your members, and that way, in interest of time, you don't necessarily have to have your secretary or whoever's in charge of your minutes read them. That's just a slight time-saving thing that you can do there. And then you move on to treasurer's report. Whatever finances, if your meeting doesn't have a finance report, then you can ignore that part. Then you move on to committee reports. Whatever committees that your assembly has going on at the time. There's two types of committees: a standing committee or a permanent committee, like a budget or new membership committees, something that you're always going to be working on. And then there's special committees, which are short-term objectives, whether it's a committee to work on finding new chairs for the office, or putting on a fundraiser of some sort. It's something that's set up that it won't be followed through for the rest of your year. Once you've finished with the business coming out of the committee reports, you move on to unfinished business. Anything that has been put on the table, or you couldn't get to, if your agenda was too full the last meeting, you can. That's when you'll finish that up, and then you move on to new business. Now, new business should be on the agenda, at least what you think it's going to be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on the agenda. You can have members bring up new business when opening it to the floor anyway. But I think that what you really need to keep in mind when going over the agenda is it's a set thing that that you can go back to and help really keep your meeting running smoothly. There's a motion that, and we'll get to talking about it, but there's a motion that can, if you're getting away from the agenda, you can make a motion to get back to what your agenda says you should do. So at this point, are there any questions about the agenda or anything, objectives of parliamentary procedure, anything like that anyone would like to ask? And if I don't have my chat up right now, so I can't see. Let's see here. Here we go. All right. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat or just speak up, and I'd be glad to go back and talk to you about it. So I'd like to just go over a couple little motions that, oh, hold on, here we go. What do you recommend for estimating timeframes for agenda items? So Ashley, as far as estimating timeframes, I suppose that depends on how many committees you would have, how much new business, how much old business. But we can jump into some things, some motions that we can use for time saving. There is a motion here. Let's see. I don't know if I have it on this one. There's a motion called to extend or limit times of debate. And that can be really helpful with timing. I can't give you a specific answer on estimating timeframes. I think that probably has to do a lot with the discussions, but or the business that you're conducting. But you can estimate timeframes a little better if you limit or extend this debate. It's a motion that you can limit or extend the time of debate. So you could say, I move that we extend, if your assembly has a set amount of time that you can debate for, some debate or some rules are like members can only speak for 3 minutes. And so if that was part of your set rules, then you could say, I move to extend limits debate to 5 minutes per person. Or you could, if you want the debate to be very succinct and you feel like it could go on for the rest of your meeting, you could say, I move to limit the debate to 2 people for and 2 people against a motion. Or 2 people for and 2 people against at 3 minutes a piece. It's really a kind of an open-ended motion that, not open-ended, but a fluid motion that kind of can work however you might need to. It is a motion that is a 2/3 vote, so it's not just a simple majority. It's a 2/3 vote, since it could, a good rule of thumb to remember for whether it's a majority vote or a 2/3 vote is if it's going to somehow limit the rights of your assembly members. So this would be, if you're limiting the debate or setting a specific time slot or amount of people that can debate on it, that obviously is limiting. So it would be a 2/3 vote on that. but I find that can be really helpful for time management, especially if you have either a lot of business to go through or a very controversial motion, or a motion that might have everybody want to talk about it. Another way to kind of move business along is referring a motion to a committee. So if you have a motion, say your group wants to go start doing a community service event, say highway cleanup. Some people in your group might have reservations. They're not sure how safe it would be, or where it would be, or what the times of that you can go out and clean the highway. So if there's a lot of unknowns, and you're getting some pushback, you can always make a motion to move it to a committee, or refer it to a committee, excuse me. And in that way, you take all that discussion and anything that you might not have the specific information to, and send that to a committee, and then they would refer back or come back with that information at your regular next scheduled meeting. So to refer a motion to a committee would sound something like, I move to refer the matter of our highway cleanup to a committee, and then you usually say a committee of 6 appointed by the chair. So the chairman or president of your organization would appoint those 6 members, and then the chair would appoint the chairman of that committee as well, and then they meet outside the meeting that you're currently in, and then they report back at the next meeting. I think that this is a really good motion to use if people are arguing about different points, if not everyone is on the same page and people are bringing up different information points about a subject. If you can refer something to committee, it won't get decided on that day, but if it's truly something that you want all the information about, I think it's a good way to get that information. So I hope that answered your question a little bit, Ashley. I'd like to talk a little bit about the chair. The chair is very important to your parliamentary procedure run meeting. Obviously, if the chair doesn't know what takes a second, or if something's debatable, or if it's a majority vote or a 2/3 vote, or if there's even a vote on something, it's very helpful to have someone leading the meeting that knows how to run that meeting. And that can also help, especially if your members don't know a whole lot about parliamentary procedure too, because the chair has the ability, and really, if you are hoping to be a good chair, you should know the motions, and then also be able to paraphrase what people are trying to say. So if you know that they're trying to make a motion, but they're not doing it right, then the chair has the ability to paraphrase and make sure that they're getting the right information out, and make sure that they're making the motion that they want to make. But the chair so a lot of motions. I'm kind of jumping around here. Let's go into. I probably should have done this at the beginning. I apologize, but the motions are there's different kinds of motions, and many of them require a second to be worked on. So if there isn't a second, then that motion dies. So if someone says, I want to, if you have a main motion about doing a highway cleanup, and someone wants to amend that by saying, I move that this motion to do a highway cleanup, I move to amend this motion by saying, or by adding the words by February 14th. If you were in that meeting today and everyone would be like, we can't do a highway cleanup by this weekend. If no one seconds that amendment, then it dies. It doesn't even have to be considered by the floor. And so in a lot of ways, the chair can, if the chair can ask for a second, but if it's something that the chair doesn't want to consider either, and there isn't a second, then the chairman, chairwoman can immediately go, the amendment did not get a second and the motion dies. So it's a pretty interesting way to kill a motion, is to not second it. It's awkward, definitely, especially for the person that made the motion, not having anybody else even want to hear what that amendment was about, but it's certainly a way to kill the motion. A couple other interesting, just not really, some helpful motions are, let's see if I've got it on here. No. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so the consideration of the motion, members can debate the motion, but they have to obtain the floor, has to be recognized by the chairman. And then it must be combined to the merits of the motion. So you can't be, unless you're making an incidental motion, then you, and I'll get to incidentals here in a little bit. I know no one knows what that means, but so the debate has to be combined to the merits of the motion, which means that if you're talking about a highway cleanup, you can't all of a sudden also try to include buying groceries for the food donation in the same motion. It's two different things, and that's part of parliamentary procedure, is keeping us focused on that one first motion. A couple motions that I like to use, or that are helpful if you don't know a whole lot of parliamentary procedure, is called a point of order. And this actually, you can interrupt other debate, and you point out a mistake that someone might have made. So if someone makes a motion and there isn't a second, and the chair decides to try to move on to debate anyway, you would stand up and say, point of order, there was no second, we shouldn't be talking about this, and the chair should recognize that he or she made a mistake and correct that. So that falls under incidental motions, which are are motions that deal with questions of procedure, and they can be used in other, or while other motions are on the table. There's parliamentary inquiry, which is just a it's kind of, if you're not sure exactly what, say, the vote is on the motion on the floor, then you can request a parliamentary inquiry. There's division of assembly. So if there's a voice vote and you can't tell who won, you can call for a division of the assembly, and that means that everyone that you have to stand or raise your hand to vote. That way it can be more easily counted than voice votes. Some other well, let's see. Sorry, I don't think this is right. If we were, I've got another question from Amy May. If we are voting on a list, say for funding, can we say, I move that we fund the first 4 projects, or do we have to say, I move that we fund the first 4 projects, Smith through Woo? So I would say that not exactly sure what the first 4 projects are. If each project is its own individual, I would assume that each of the 4 projects are their own individual motions, especially if they haven't been brought to the floor yet. If they're 4, I guess I probably need some more clarification. Amy, would you mind getting on and?
No, not at all. So what we have is we fund, like, we have people send in proposals, and then we have a committee who votes which proposals we will fund. And so everybody ahead of time receives a list of what those projects are, and we put them in the order usually of sort of how they were ranked in advance by a scorecard. That's done in advance of getting together for the actual vote. So when we get together with the committee then goes through a vote, and what they say is, I move to fund the first 4 projects. But a little bit of a question is, do we have to name the first project in the range to the last project in the range that we've agreed to fund? So let's say we had 12 projects, but we were going to fund the first 4, and the first name was Smith, the last name was Woo. I just gave that example just to
okay.
Does that make sense? That do we have to name the first and the last project in the range, or if everyone has received the list, can we just say we fund the first 4 projects or whatever?
Okay. So what I would say, and it looks like we have a Washington FFA educator with us too, maybe he might want to chime on this, but what I would say is, if you've already been doing this, I'm saying that you move to fund the first 4 projects. If that's something that, I mean, to me, that doesn't make sense, because I hadn't seen what your agenda is like, or the what the motions are. But if that's something that your committee or your assembly already does, and everyone knows that that's what you're talking about, then I wouldn't say that it's probably not procedurally correct. But if everyone knows what you're talking about, and it's not confusing or muddling up the flow of the agenda, I wouldn't say that you would change that just because it's already been something that you're doing. Now, I mean, if you wanted to say funding the first 4 projects, Smith through Woo, or 1 through 4, or 1, 4, 5, and 7, then that would be more specific. But it would be hard if you said, I move we fund the first 4 projects, it would be harder to amend that. While that main motion's on the floor, it would be harder to amend that and say, if you wanted to add or remove, if someone wanted to add or remove one of those projects. If you said, I move that we fund the first 4 projects, Smith, West, and 2, Jason and Woo, if you said all 4 of them, then that would make it easier to amend that by adding another name or removing a name or 2. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know if Jason wants to chime in, but does that sound right to you, Jason?
Yeah, Ben, I think you're right. Procedurally, I don't think it's wrong
Right.
to not say that, but I think for other motion purposes, if you wanted to amend it for minutes for your entire membership to read, I think being specific and clear on what that motion is doing is always a good route to go. But as far as parliamentary procedure, you wouldn't have to, but it would help, like you said, if you were making an amendment, it would allow it to be more easily amended.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So yeah, being specific as possible, definitely, although it'd be wordier, I think that it makes it easier for record keeping, as Jason said, and yeah, that would be how I would do it. I would say either the name of the project or the number of it, and that would definitely make it easier for debate or amendment. So I think now I'll just go through this list here and point out a couple pretty big, not a couple motions, rules that that kind of help move a meeting along, or just help in general. The fourth row down, the end debate, I move the previous question, is from what I've seen in my adult life of doing parliamentary procedure, there's not a whole lot of people that know the previous question. It's used to end debate on everything that's on the table. It's pretty. Oh, I'll get to, sorry, I've got another question here. Hold on just a second. I'll get to Brock's question here in a minute, but let me finish up previous questions. So if you are, if there's just seems to be no end in sight on debate on the things that you have on the table, you can move the previous question. And as you can see on the table there, it is a 2/3 vote because it does end debate, but it doesn't just end debate on the motion that's on, it ends debate for everything. So if you're working on an amendment to a main motion, then and someone calls the previous question, if it passes, you vote on that amendment, and then you go right in and you vote on the main motion, and you don't get any more debate. And that's a fun one to do in parliamentary procedure competitions, because it is, the competitions are timed, and if some of your members that you're competing with are not paying attention to the time and you need to get out of there, I always really enjoyed moving the previous question in our competitions, just to stop everything. But it is a kind of a sneaky way to end debate on your motions on the table. If you have a good chairman, the chairman should, or chairwoman should, when presenting this motion to your assembly, should tell everybody this, if passed, this motion will end debate on everything on the table, and it is a two-thirds vote to pass it. So I want to, I always found interesting and really enjoyed, just because not very many people are aware of the power that it has. Let's get to Brock's question here. Oh, it looks like some people have already answered. All right. Brock said, how do you handle dispute concerns about the agenda when a meeting is started? For example, if something should be on the agenda and is missing, or is on the agenda and should not be. And then Jason replied, Brock, some organizations at the beginning of each meeting ask for a motion to approve the agenda. This would allow meeting members to recommend amendments to the agenda before. Yeah, and I agree with what Jason said there. That's the approval of the agenda is something I kind of skipped over when talking, or I did skip over when talking about how your agenda should be set up. It's like I said, it is customary to have your new business already on the agenda so that people know what's coming up, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And then the old business should already have been put automatically on there. I'm not sure what else you might have, what might be what dispute concerns there you might have in general, Brock?
I was just thinking, like, if you have a specific item, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So like if you have a specific item and maybe in the previous meeting, it needed to be tabled until the following meeting based on time's sake.
Yep.
But whoever filled out the agenda maybe felt that it was finished up enough, even though no decision was made.
Oh.
It just didn't make its way onto the new agenda.
So you're whoever's writing your minutes and setting your agenda is kind of cherry picking what should be on the next agenda?
Yeah, yes, you can say that.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be a good reason to have the agenda sent out beforehand to clear up any of those disputes beforehand.
But then do you bring that up as it's shared beforehand? Like, I'm assuming it'll be emailed out. Do you send an email
right,
with the
and
reply all?
that's like Mr. Bullock said, having it sent out prior is, yeah, I think he hit it right on the head. Sending out the agenda prior to board members and committee members is a good way to proactively catch things. But it is, yeah, that would be the reason to have your agenda approved at the beginning of the meeting. Just if you're starting to see, or if especially if you have a lot of things on your agenda, right? Because that could accidentally slip through. It sounds like in your case, it's probably a purposeful omission, or maybe accidentally purposeful omission. But yeah, that I agree that sending, if you have more than a couple things on your agenda that you're trying to get through, and they're well, especially anything that's tabled should be coming back as under old business. So yeah, if it's not on there, then yeah, I think we've covered that pretty well. Yeah, does that make sense to you, Brock? Okay. All right. Great. Some other, so let's go off of what Brock said a little bit on making old business, if you will. So postponing something to, or putting something on the table for a certain time, that's called postponing something definitely. It has a cousin motion called postponing indefinitely, which effectively kills the motion. If you're postponing something without a end date, then it's not going to be on old business because you haven't made it old business. You just say it's still there. We haven't. You don't vote to actually kill it, but it effectively kills that meeting. But getting back to postponing definitely, you can postpone a motion to the end of the meeting. You can postpone it to your next regularly scheduled meeting. And that is, let's see if I have it on my list of things. I think I might have accidentally put the wrong page up here, but I've got, so it's to postpone something to a certain time, whether that be the end of the meeting or your next scheduled meeting. It's debatable. You can, once that motion is made, you can give the floor is open to debate whether it should be tabled or not. Obviously, that's going to take a little bit of time, but if you're trying to get to something, if a motion's brought up that you think is important, but also need to get on to something more important for your on your agenda, then that is a good tool. I think that all the times that I've ever used it is is postponing to the next meeting, especially if you're trying to get on to more important business, and to take it off the table or to bring it back before the assembly, then all you have to do is I move that we take it off the table. I think, I'm sorry, I wrote that one down wrong, I think, but it's very easy to take motions on and off the table unless you have them postponed to a certain time. Oh, lost Carol. So we went through postponing to a certain time, and it's postponing indefinitely. So now I want to get into some motions. Sorry. I think that's all the motions that I really wanted to get to. Does anyone have any that they see on your screen here that you'd like to talk about, or any other questions? I know I kind of bounced all over the place. It's a really wide and boring topic, and I tried to grab some interesting ones for you guys. But if there's anything that anybody else would like to talk about, I'd be more than willing to do that. Okay, well,
Ben.
Oh, yeah.
So one I think that might be applicable in an organizational setting is the previous question. So I didn't know if you wanted us to I'm willing to go through a mock example of that, or what that looks like. Because if you have members or committee members that are, in heated discussion about a topic, how do you end that discussion to be able to vote on that motion? So I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate on that one a little bit more.
Okay, so
do a little demonstration too.
on the previous question for are you wanting me to expand on why you would want to kill the debate, or
Yeah, I think that might be advantageous to see as to why you would use previous question and understanding how that works in a meeting setting.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're one way that you wouldn't have to use previous question would be to limit or extend limits of debate, and that they're both those previous question and extending or limiting debate are both 2/3 votes, so they're both a little harder to pass because they're both limiting your debate in some fashion. And if you're but the limit or extend limits of debate only applies to that motion that you're working on at the time. So if you're working on an amendment to a motion and people just keep amending your main motion and putting it back into amend, or if say you've got that highway cleanup motion that I posed at the beginning, if people just are fighting this motion and wanting to add more or take away, and you keep going back to the main motion, keep amending it again, then that would be the previous question would be a great way to end that motion, because if it passes, of course, if you get the 2/3 vote to pass it, then it kills it and there won't be any more amendments to that. If it doesn't, then you're right back to the still arguing or still debating, not arguing, debating. But yeah, is that hit what you? So yeah, if you're just going back and forth on a particular motion and you can't get out of it, then I mean, I would probably try to do limit or extend limits of debate first, just because that's a little more fair to everybody to be able to get one more debate in. But if you've been going around and around and around on it, then previous question would be the fastest way to kill debate on that motion and vote on it and get on to the next thing. And then got a question from Ashley here. Could I go into more detail on duties of the chair, specifically pertaining to motion? Are they allowed to make motions or just ask for them? Sorry. Yeah, so chair are not allowed to make the motions. They're specifically there for information. So if a member requests a point of information, they should be able to know about the parliamentary procedure process and what each motion requires. Second, debatable vote, all that stuff on that table that I have up. They should know that and be able to expound on that if they need to. But they also are there to help keep the meeting running. They trying to if someone says a motion wrong, but it's obvious what they're trying to accomplish, the chair should be able and should, I would say, help along with that information. And they can't make a second to a motion. They can ask for a second. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get one. But the chair can also skip over it. If there's a motion that's presented to the floor, the chair could almost, without waiting, say, seeing no second, the motion dies. If there's not a second, that motion is dead. So if a good chair can really keep things moving along and kind of can be, I mean, if the chair is biased, they could not recognize someone that they know is against a motion that they like, or they can keep calling on people that are for the motion that they like. Obviously, everyone gets to debate through parliamentary procedure, but if the chair knows they don't have to call in any specific order. So let's see what Mr. Bullock said. Chairs are to be fair and impartial. Yeah, should be, right? Everyone's human, and especially if it's getting heated, there could be some human interference there. There is a procedure which the chair can relinquish their duties if they would like to present a motion, but that has an entire motion to be handled before they can do that. Yes. So the chair is mostly just trying to keep everything together and making sure everything has been presided over and is being procedurally done correctly. Are there rules or procedures for non-board members? I think Margaret, are there rules and procedures for non-board? So as far as voting is concerned, or I'm not sure what exactly you are looking for there. That I think a lot of that will have to do with your bylaws of your whatever meeting you're having. There's, as far as who can talk, or I guess, can give me an example maybe, and I can expand a little bit.
Okay, I can elaborate. So I'm usually advisory staff in meetings. I am on a board at a couple of meetings, but in general, I'm advisory. So, and it differs depending on what committee, but some of them I have to be recognized before I can speak, and I can't motion, and I can't make a comment without being recognized. And others, we're served essentially as board members, and we're allowed to make motions and stuff. And it's,
Okay.
I don't think they're necessarily correct, but they are very different.
Okay, so I think what there is a difference between an actual entire voting assembly and just a board committee that's taking public input, and not everyone does parliamentary the same, right? There's some assemblies use very, very basic, I move to do this and I move to adjourn, and that's basically all the parliamentary procedure they do, right? And then there's others that follow this whole, all the tables of all the different rules on there. So I would say it probably depends on your bylaws of your organization and how those meetings are set up. Without more information on what that assembly, that whichever one you're doing, I can't really, I don't know, I guess, exactly what can and can't be done in your meetings, I guess, is But so the rules or procedures, yeah, I'd say the rules or procedures of non-board members, if you're in like a board meeting, it probably is set down by those bylaws, I guess is what it probably comes down to.
Ben, can I add something as well?
Say that again?
Can I add something as well?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think it does depend on how your organization is structured and what's in those bylaws. And from my experience, some organizations will have like a public hearing where people can express their opinions before they
Yep.
go into a business session. And then in that business session, as when the board members would handle all the discussion on that. But so that's one way to approach it. But it would depend on what are in your bylaws and your policies and procedures for your specific organization. So you're right on that. Yep.
We are coming right up on 1 o'clock. I think we have time for one more question if there was another one. Okay. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us and
No problem.
walking
Thank
us
you, everybody,
through
for the questions.
some complicated situations. I just want to make sure that I share with everyone some of our upcoming, sorry, my screen just disappeared on me. So we have some upcoming, our next Tune-Up Tuesday coming up next month will be Mike Gaffney, from the director of WSU, will be joining us, and he's going to walk us through some collaborative decision making. And we're actually going to go into breakout rooms for this one. And he's going to have a facilitator in each breakout room to walk us through a case study on collaborative decision making. And then another thing I wanted to bring your guys' attention to is that tomorrow we're hosting another webinar, and it's a communication series. So we're actually meeting every Wednesday this month to walk through emotional intelligence and courageous conversations. So we would love to have you all join us right back here tomorrow from noon to 1, and we'll be doing that every Wednesday in February. And you can learn more and register for all of our future webinars, both of the ones I just mentioned, at agforestry.org/webinars. And we also have the recording from last Wednesday's, the first webinar in the communication series. So if you're interested in catching up on that, you can get caught up. But I know you all need to get back to your workday. And I just want to say one final thank you. Ben, thank you for joining us today again, and bringing us some more knowledge about the parliamentary procedure process. So thank you all so much for being here. Feel free to turn on your camera and give us a wave goodbye. It was a pleasure to see you all.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the questions. And I hope I got to at least get a couple people hooked on parliamentary procedure.
Good job, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
See you later, Ben.